content warnings for this episode of Sekiro. Blood, gore, bright flashes, loud noises, fire, burning, gunshots, explosions, disease, animal cruelty, ghosts, and skeletons. Please be aware, and now on to the episode. Hello there, I am Tolvo. Welcome back to the historical Lorethrough and Let's Play of Sekiro. We're going to be doing some setup for the end of Sekiro here. This is a bit of a between episode, between we get into more stuff relating to bosses and the ending of the game in the next episode. The ending won't be the next episode, but we'll be doing more boss stuff and lore things in that episode. Here I want to show just some like cleanup almost for going through areas that we missed. Hey, the sculptor's gone. Huh. I wonder where he went. It's a little odd to come in here and he's not here working away. He's been here every single time. I wonder what he's up to. Perhaps he's fled because of the Interior Ministry invading, but who knows? Anyway, this episode is going to be structured a little bit differently, and I'm going to structure things differently going forward. I'm just showing here that this is what happens when the sculptor leaves. You can actually still do all your upgrading and stuff that he would normally do. For some reason, it still costs Sen. To be honest, it never made any sense why it costs Sen when the sculptor does it anyway. Sekiro has a sort of thing throughout it of characters learning skills from one another and from observing people doing things and learning by observing. That is kind of what Mikiri even means. With this in mind now, Sekiro is effectively a sculptor. He can create sculptures, he can craft, he can upgrade his own prosthetic arm. Now, some useful prosthetics to get would be to work on the umbrella upgrades. With them, the lilac umbrella lets you deflect and block terror and magic attacks. It's very handy to have. The Suzaku's umbrella allows you to block and deflect fire attacks. It's going to be very useful going forward. Of course, on Charmless difficulty, you're going to have to deflect with the umbrella. You can't block with it, you'll still take damage. I also got the Golden Vortex upgrade for Divine Abduction, for farming purposes. So mysteriously, the sculptor is missing, and oh look, the path out of here is burned. We can't grapple up there anymore to get through to the outskirts. That's a little weird. I wonder what's going on here. Maybe the sculptor used another path to get up there, or past there. He could have used the shinobi door, which we'll be using right now. As a part of the sort of like cleanup and going around and tying up loose ends, I want to look at some aspects of things that we didn't get to look at too closely that don't show up early on. Right now, I'm just showing off the scabbard of Ishin. That is the one he has as Tengu. There is some sort of like rice or powder next to the aroma incense. This armor up here does not appear to be Ishin's. Maybe the body is, or it's a different set or one that was gifted. Here we can also see some swords set up. Now, looking behind the armor, you can actually see some artwork of the sakura trees, possibly the Everblossom itself. There are some mysterious things that are surrounding Ishin and his relation to the sakura. Seemingly, he may have been to Fountainhead Palace in the past. It's why I wonder if he is the figure in the artwork for the lightning reversal. I'm also going to be going around and catching up on a eavesdrop that appears now. We're going to be going to the Old Grave area. There is an enemy over here, so say hi, or Sohei, or Sohei. So this is a Sohei, seemingly of the Senpo Temple. He was doing a Pure Land Buddhism chant, the Nembutsu. I may be saying various things wrong, I apologize. I mostly know things by reading them. I showed some artwork. It is modern artwork, not historical artwork. It is hard to find good historical artwork of the various Sohei, like the Iko-iki, though the Iko-iki were a little bit different. These are a bit more like mercenaries, but as far as I know, they can be like, the term can apply to both. He appeared to be doing that almost like a warning of his death, or like way to ward off death, or in case he dies. He's very worried that he's going to die while being in this fight, but he also does not want to leave before being paid and before earning his coin. The Nembutsu, as far as I know, can be recited daily. It can be recited before you die, and I believe there's a specific day or possibly days for reciting it. There are different versions. This is, of course, the Japanese version of the Pure Land Buddhism chant, which I believe there's actually different schools with different versions of that even. In the third phase of the Sekiro world, as you can see, the monkeys have overrun this area yet again. There are now the dual sword white monkeys, which, as far as I've seen in the manga that they're doing, we get to see that these were formerly people that have turned into the monkeys. This fits with various things in Sekiro and what I was talking about with the hierarchies and Taoist elements and Confucian elements. It gets a little bit confusing, but I haven't got to read too much of the manga or get perfect translations. I believe there are decent translations that are public. I just haven't gotten to read them yet. Also here, I was just having some fun showing off the finger whistle's ability to make animals fight each other. This does indeed work on the white monkeys. They're actually one of the enemies you might most want to do that to. Now, as far as I know, the finger whistle does not work on the bowls. You really need firecrackers for that. Also, just showing off, you can do a jump kill on the monkeys. I'm trying to remember the name of the person who pointed that out. It's hard because they were in the Discord, and I don't know that the name is commonly used by them. It was some sort of like Palpatine Kermit. But definitely Kermit, like the Muppet. They pointed out that you can do that for the monkeys. I actually forgot to try that on them originally. Every now and then there are things I will miss, and feel free to point them out. There are many things I already know. I have collected a wealth of footage and information about nearly everything in the game. I would say like 99% of things. But there's still that 1%. I'm going through here to go and show off an aspect that happens as night comes, and it's something that's mentioned in the tooltips in the game on loading screens for the twilight and spirits coming out at night. Now, it is based upon the bosses you kill, the main bosses in the game. Corrupted Monk, Guardian Ape, the Folding Screen Monkeys, Genichiro, for example. It's a little bit hard to tell what influences all of it and in what regard. Seemingly, those ones are the big factors in the change in time as well as the phase of game change. Owl might be another, so might Owl Father. And I imagine that Divine Dragon does a pretty big one because it enters another phase of the game. The main sorts of ghosts you will see around each area are Nightjar, these dojo fencers of Ashina, and Mibu villagers. There doesn't really appear to be a rhyme or reason to them. These ones are probably the most dangerous to get in a group. There are some pretty rare interactions you can get and rare spawning of them. For instance, when you kill long-armed centipede Senun, they can spawn, depending on how many bosses you've killed. However, they don't appear to spawn in the room unless you just killed Senun. If you go into that room after you had killed him a while ago, they won't be there, they won't spawn. Another one appears to be right after Centipede Giraffe, or Centipede Kirin. Those ones appear to nearly always spawn. Sometimes I've got it where they won't. Those often seem to be Mibu villagers as well. Along Ashina Depths, you will find a lot of Nightjar spawning up on the trees. They're actually kind of frustrating. If you're trying to go through an area no hit, no damage, they're really annoying. It's not clear why some of these phantoms are really chosen. Some can make some sense in some regards, like the Nightjar would probably be throughout the entire area. The Fencer Dojos, though, why are these people out here dying? It makes it seem like they're kind of random in choice, especially the Mibu villagers. The Mibu villagers models are actually used in the Lady Butterfly fight. They are the illusions she summons. Also here showing the various tiny Buddhist statues here. You can see Jizo, of course. Now, as I mentioned in the episode about the Usoi's Forest, Lady Butterfly might have some relation to Mibu, or she was pretty close to it, essentially, since that is where the Phantom Butterflies seem to be from. And it appears to be a domain that she trained in, possibly with Wolf teaching him, possibly alongside Owl. Now, we know Owl's name is Usoi. It seems to be his family name, because he says it first, I believe. I'll get into his name later. For now, don't worry too much about that. Now, the bridge is out. We should have already killed the serpent up there, so it won't be down here to bother us. There is an important little environmental detail I wanted to look at here, though. It's something that can be a little bit annoying to get a clear look at. For some reason, when you get even remotely near to it, it starts to disappear like you're too close. You'll be able to see partially through it. It is this monkey skeleton. Now, I'm going to probably butcher this, but the Japanese macaque, or macaque, or macaque, I don't know how to pronounce it. But you might recall another skeleton. I'm also going to look at actually one of the monkeys alive, to get a good look at its body, to see its stance and sort of how it's standing. As you can recall, there's one right up here, next to the skeleton of the mate of the guardian ape. Now, it's kind of hard to tell and get a clear look because some of it is rotted. And I'm definitely not a primate skeleton expert. From comparing various images, though, I would say that the large skeleton is of a monkey. You can actually see it looks incredibly similar to the monkey skeleton we found in Sunken Valley. Here I'm showing they have a similar structure in how the skeleton is set up. You can see that sort of hunched over look. The guardian ape actually is hunched over in the same way, especially in the headless form. I'm going to show right here a skull. You can see they're quite similar. And ape and gorilla and orangutan and monkey skulls are actually fairly different in ways. Someone who would be an actual expert could go into all of this and get the measurements and figure out everything different. But when you look at the skeleton, it looks like the Japanese monkey skeleton. And it doesn't really look like what I can find of gorilla or large ape skeletons. I'm looking around here showing a few different areas. That appears to be the Spiral Cloud Passage of Fountainhead Palace. But it's not moving. We don't see any lightning at it. There appears to be some limitations, possibly with the engine. Over here, near where you find the red and white pinwheel, is another spawning ghost of a dojo fencer. This one will always be a dojo fencer. No matter what, you'll get a dojo fencer right here. One-on-one, it's not too bad to deal with. Now, there being a ghost there does make sense in various regards, as the bibbed baby statues, the red bib babies being of Jizu relation, as a sort of way to guide the many children that died in Senpo. It is there to help alleviate them in the hells of the afterlife. As far as I've read, a common practice is to stack stones near those to help the spirits of babies and children in the afterworld so that they don't have to toil as hard stacking all of the rocks that they do before they're allowed to ascend to a higher plane or escape from the hells, which is pretty morbid. Unpleasant. Also, there were the night jars up there. There will also be night jars right near where you fight Headless Ape in Ashina Depths. Right past it, it's where you talk to Jinzaimon. Past Orin is another one. This is where we fought Orin of the Water, who possibly is related to Sakuzaimon or Devil Sakuza. There will be a dojo fencer here. Also, just showing snapseeds, do not work on them. These are not illusions. While they have the sort of covering like the corrupted monk illusion, these are not illusions. These are definitely spirits. I actually should test Divine Confetti on them and the Lazulite Flame Vent at some point. The damage difference wouldn't really matter, but it might still be nice to just actually see and check. Over there is where the Mibu head priest was. He is dead now. We gave him the water of the palace that turned him into a palace noble, showing explicitly the water of the palace does that. It is explicitly the water of the palace that transforms people. I realized I might not have gotten quite a good look here when I was in the wedding cave area. But there are the slugs all along the ground. You'll find them all around the shelter stone. they're possibly related. From what I've heard, various things I've suggested about how the infestation works, how the centipedes are formed relating to the water of the palace, how they are sort of like a parasite existing and thriving off of the runoff of the Sakura dragon, has been shown to be correct in the manga. But I will be getting into that into a later episode when I can fully read it and take it all in. But I do want to get into that. It is important. Also, you can see the wrecked palanquin for the wedding. Over here are things that almost resemble lotuses. There's lots of interesting little bits of plant life and flora around Sekiro's world. And those are stalactites, you can tell, because stalactites fall down. Always a fun one to remember. It would be really embarrassing if that's incorrect and I remember that wrong. I'm leaving that in the episode, just so people can see if I made an error and can laugh at me. These little stone lanterns are a pretty common feature in Japanese architecture around religious areas and shrines and temples. So where should we go next? We are back at the stairway. As you might recall, we fought the Shigekichi of the Red Guard over here. Seemingly, the Interior Ministry forces here are called the Red Guard, which would make sense. I've talked many months ago, near release of the game, about their armor being based upon the Sonata and seemingly influenced by the Takeda. There was the Red Fire Brigade, I believe it was called. Red Brigade, Fire Brigade, the mounted cavalry unit of the Takeda. One of their great warriors, and I believe he was a general at one point, though he might have had a rank below that. The Takeda had a lot of generals. They had like, what was it, 27 to 40? I think it was 27, because that sounds like a more reasonable number, but it could be more. The amount of generals they would have depended typically on the size of the army, and keep in mind, general is not always used in the modern sense, so it doesn't necessarily mean they have more than like 1,000 soldiers each always. Here are the little Senpo assassins that have seemingly gone turncoat and worked for the Interior Ministry. Though who knows if Senpo is the only place really that has people like this. You never know. That grab they do, you can deflect. It is a deflectable grab. You can also dodge through it. They're very annoying to fight. I don't like fighting them, especially charmless. But now they are out of the way. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be structuring things in the LP and historical Lorethrough a little bit differently. In a bit, we're going to be seeing some slow motion footage that will be rather cinematic and for fun. This area is very hard to fight through. All of these Interior Ministry soldiers with the dual swords are going to be a major pain. Also here I'm showing the enemy drops an additional amount of loot and money when you use the vortex on them. You can actually empower your blade with the vortex or the divine abduction. What will happen is the next time you hit an enemy with it within a short period, they will get spun around and get the effect. See, even the Interior Ministry Shinobi are struggling with these guys. Their way of spreading poison on the ground always makes me think of Owl, as Owl does that in the Great Shinobi fight during the second phase. He's rather fond of that tactic. Also, unfortunately, that guy ran out of time as a puppet right as we got here. Now, here's a fun little thing you can always do with the Flame Vent. The Flame Vent Blast knocks enemies back. This actually works on mini-bosses. Now, if you knock a mini-boss off, it technically doesn't kill them. You'll actually get drops from them, but you won't get the main drop you get for killing them, and they'll actually respawn. For some reason, the lazulite flame vent pushes enemies further with that. I don't know why, but yeah, it seems to blast them just a little bit further. Now, the trigger for them dying appears to be the death of Lady Butterfly. Now, that would make sense, as soon as she is dead, you no longer need them. That would kind of tell the game right away, well, we don't need them anymore. Deflecting all of the hits of these guys is a major pain, especially on higher difficulties. Their posture gets incredibly ridiculous. You'll have to fight them for quite a while. And this area is full of gunners up in towers with explosive fire shots. As you can see, it is building up fire damage. So I will be lit on fire in time if I'm hit too much. If you get to the gunners before they can put away their gun and bring out their swords, you can just R1 spam them to death. They'll keep their gun out then and keep trying to block, so you can just keep hitting them until they posture break, because they're not going to get a deflect. However, if you don't do that, they can be a bit of a challenge. A new game, it's not too bad. In 1 or 2 deflects, you can usually posture break them. So it's not too bad. Always remember when going through this area to be careful when grappling up, because you might get hit by a shot. And with the Interior Ministry forces is a chained ogre. A little strange. Now, if they really are related to the Tokugawa shogunate, Tokugawa did use the Westerners in his armies. Very rarely. There were a very select few, and by this period, most were gone. Of course, the most famous being William Adams of Neo fame. Let's get to some slow motion footage. Now, I actually could have just played the game and then slowed it down in post. It would cause the audio to warp, though. So I chose to do this instead. I wanted to show off the FPS unlocker and get some nice cinematic footage. The HUD is off. This is set at, I believe, roughly 60% speed. It shows a pretty good path as well if you want to go through and kill all of these enemies. As was mentioned, this is a sort of fire arrow rocket gun that they're using. That is what they're firing. That's why it is exploding. Now they are wearing kettle helms. Kettle helms were pretty standard. The kabuto, of course, is what is mostly used by the higher-ups and those who can afford it. You can sort of see the difference in the status of the soldiers. The lower ones, who might be like Ashigaru or just more basic soldiers, are wearing these kettle helms. Also, showing off again, you can blow them up. It's very great for posture breaking. It's also great for dealing with large swaths of enemies, but it can be hard to time, and the explosion is rather big. You might get blown back when you try it. There is the chained ogre here that you want to be careful of. It's not a bad idea to puppet the guys with the flame-throwing cannon. With it, they can light up various enemies in this area. The explosion does not knock over the chained ogre. And their fire attacks can light them. It's actually pretty common for the gunshots to light them. That shoulder charge is something that is probably going to hit a lot of people. As mentioned, you can tell apart how dangerous the soldiers are depending on whether they have a kabuto or a kettle helm. The ones with the kabuto are seemingly full-fledged samurai. They hit really hard and are pretty dangerous. They shoulder check a lot. They have a lot of mix-ups. They're far more aggressive. They have more hyper armor. They're just very dangerous. I'd say they're one of the most dangerous base enemies in the game that isn't a boss. Also, this was slowed down, but I actually only had I think it was 1/3 of a second to react to that, since that is when he first appeared on. And you can use Mist Raven to deal with various situations. You don't have to only use it on the biggest of attacks, and it can be very helpful if you're in groups of enemies. Now, of course, whenever you Mikiri someone, it will most often make everyone around them pause. I'm going to be using this for discussing lore in the next episode. I'm going to use this as a sort of B-roll. That way people can see some pretty good-looking and fun-looking gameplay that's nice and snazzy. No HUD, seeing cool things in slow motion as I talk about the lore and the real-world history that has influenced various things. Mikiri, of course, gives you iframes. You can iframe dodge through grab attacks, as I mentioned in the grab guide. Chained Ogre is perhaps one of the best things for showing that. Now, you can actually dodge attacks with the Flame Vent. Since that blast pushes you so far, you can actually use it to create space. Also, yes, that actually was a dodge right there. I had to spin and dodge just timed right. And here's the example with the Flame Vent. I actually dodged that grab. That was something I intended. I wanted to try and get it to work on video. Now, I find it very interesting this Chained Ogre does not actually go out of his way to attack the Interior Ministry forces. The one that you find in the Ashina Castle area that they have seemingly brought will actually attack the Interior Ministry forces. They're not on the same team. However, here they won't hit each other. They'll just go right through each other. They won't deal damage to each other. They won't aggro on each other. With this out of the way, let us prepare for the next episode where we will be dealing with the Flames of Hatred, one of the secret sort of end bosses that is incredibly hard. I am Tolvo, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.